Ahoy mateys, hey, I'm sitting back enjoying a cold one thanks to my new refrigeration unit from Technotic's cold blue system. I tell you, this thing, it's amazing. It's air cooled, it's got the chiller plate. They've been in business, I made a few notes here for you, since 1968. And this thing comes fully charged and ready to go. You know, you set your compressor in one area, put your cold plate in the ice box. It was an ice box. Oh, hey, there's neighbors. Hi, neighbors. Hello. Everybody likes this chair, I got to tell you. The hardest part of putting this thing together, though, was making the shelf where the compressor was going to go. And my ice box didn't have any insulation in it at all. So I put 3 inches of insulation in. I also put some foam in. The wiring of it and the hooking up took me less than an hour. And that's pretty good for a non-mechanic like me. Because these units are built for the DIY person, the do-it-yourself guy. The unit comes fully charged. You don't have to get a refrigeration guy in and charge it. Everything is ready to go. The tubing, it's color coded, so you can't mess that up. The wiring, it's just really simple. Boom, boom, boom. And you know, part of the thing here, I'm going to show you the tools that I needed for this. Make sure you use the right size wire. Now my unit, and there's a diagram here, I'll show you, it tells you what size to use. I used a 10 gauge, and make sure it's marine grade. That is, that it's stranded and tinned wire. So that was 10 gauge for the DC power. For the thermostat, that was a 16 gauge, and again, make sure it's marine grade. I'm going to put a link in the bottom here that you can download and look at the install manual to see how easy this is. I mean, it's not even a day project. And now I got a little water here because it's so hot. This was frozen. The bottom part of my refrigerator is freezing. And then the second part of it, the upper part, is staying at 36 to 38 degrees. And I don't even have this thing turned down all the way, or turned up, whichever you want to call it. The other nice thing about having the cold plate rather than this little flimsy plate, you know, that you bend around and stuff like that, this thing only cycles on about 4, maybe 6 times a day, where you take these other units, they're either pushing water through constantly and running all the time, or if they're another kind of like air cooled unit, they're kicking on, man, 50, 60, 70 times a day, maybe more. So this is more energy efficient, drawing less battery power for you too. And there's different settings that you can set the compressor so that it cools faster or slower. The slower it cools, the less energy you're going to use. The quicker it cools, the more energy you're going to use. So let's say you've just reprovisioned, you may want to switch that compressor up to a higher speed. It's real easy to do with the little dip switches that are on the top of the compressor. Well, let's look at the unit and talk a little bit more about the install process. Now, after installing the compressor, which needs to be on a flat surface, it needs to be level as you can get it. and install the cold plate, either horizontally or vertically. Now you're ready to hook up the refrigeration lines. You know, and keep the blue caps and the red caps, keep those caps on the tubing and on the cold plate and the compressor until you're ready to hook them up to keep any contamination from happening, especially when you're feeding the tubes through to the refrigerator box. And you want the coils to be outside the refrigerator box, not inside the refrigerator box. So you'll want to hook up the cold plate first, you know, run the wires through or the cables through, hook that up, and then hook up the compressor. And when you're putting these lines together, don't over tighten them. They don't need to be super tight. You may hear a little whoosh at one point. That's normal. You're not losing fluid. I mean, these things are designed to be connected and disconnected. And be careful when uncoiling this. You don't want to kink anything. And that goes for the thermostat as well. You don't want to kink that wire. And the thermostat is going to go inside the box. And the control is attached to the cold plate through this copper tubing, because it senses how cold the cold plate is, and that's how it operates. Now when you're ready to do the wiring, make sure you have the correct size connectors. And here, you know, I like to use the I connector to the breaker box, and it should have its own 15 amp dedicated breaker for that. The other plugs that go to the compressor, those are supplied, and just be sure that you have the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative. To start the unit up, it's recommended that you start the compressor at the low speed, which would be the 2 dip switches off, and give it about 8 to 10 hours to balance the system out and get cold and make sure everything is right, and then you can adjust the speed of the compressor for what your needs are. All right, guys, you see how easy that was? Simple, efficient. It's the way to go. Well, happy and safe boating to you, your family, and friends, and keep your scotch cold.